In this lesson, we're going to discuss basic present tense subjunctive sentences. And basic present tense subjunctive sentences using the following formula. Subject 1 plus verb 1 plus que plus the relative pronoun que plus subject 2 plus verb 2, and I like to include ROTS, which is rest of the sentence. Now, if you notice on this equation, there are two subjects. This is subject number 1, and this is subject number 2. Now, there has to be two subjects in order to have this basic subjunctive sentence. Okay? And then there is verb 1, which agrees with subject 1. Then there is verb 2 that agrees with subject number 2. There is what I like to tell my students, this great wall that separates the first subject and first verb from the second subject and second verb. And that is the relative pronoun que, which I like to label like this. It's the great wall, the great divide. And it is a structure that is a big clue of the subjunctive, but the structure itself doesn't mean that it's going to be subjunctive. In this type of sentence, what we have to do is look at the indicative side of the sentence. This is the indicative clause, in order to know whether the second side is going to be either subjunctive or indicative. And the way we know whether it is or whether it is not, whether this side is subjunctive or whether it is not, whether it's going to be indicative, is going to be, in this type of sentence, verb 1. Verb 1, the structure in itself doesn't tell us, but it's a big clue. So look for this structure when you're looking for and creating subjunctive sentences. But then verb 1 will give us the key. It is the key. It's the thing that tells us subjunctive or not. Verb 1 has to be a qualifying verb, one of those verbs that triggers the use of the subjunctive. And a way that I clue in my students as to whether that verb is a subjunctive, a verb that keys or triggers the use of the subjunctive, is an acronym that I've seen widely used on the internet. That's a W, and here it is E-I-R-D and O, and together spells W.E.I.R.D.O. I've seen this acronym or this method also spelled out with wedding, W-E-D-D-I-N-G. However, I like to use W.E.I.R.D.O. in my class simply because I think it's easier to remember, sure, less letters. And I think it's a method that really used in order to teach the basic subjunctive sentence, present tense subjunctive, and then also when you go into the imperfect subjunctive sentences. And W.E.I.R.D.O. In this case, what I tell my students, or what I like to, the basics of this, is that the W stands for wishes and wants, and the E stands for emotions, and the I is for impersonal expressions that state an opinion, qualifying impersonal expressions, sometimes implied command, but impersonal expressions. The R for recommendations, and the D for doubts, denials, and then the O is for the expression, that Spanish expression, ojalá. Ojalá literally means, it's an Arabic word that has come into Spanish, literally means if God wishes it. However, in order to remember it, it now means mostly hopefully, throughout the Spanish language, hopefully. Okay? Today's lesson, we're going to focus on I, and impersonal expressions when they are in the indicative clause. Okay? Impersonal expressions. I'll give you one example. Basic subjunctive sentences, and it will follow that equation. Impersonal expressions are those expressions that, like the name says, has no person involved in it. Es dudoso. In English, that means it is doubtful. And when you say that in English, it es dudoso, it is doubtful. The subject is it. Okay? And if you look at the Spanish of this, es is your verb 1, and your subject on this would also be it. There is no person involved. There is no yo dudo. There is no tú dudas. There is no él duda. It is es dudoso, meaning it's doubtful. Es dudoso que, es dudoso que, and then you have a subject number 2. And in this case, let's put subject number 2 as my students. Okay, es dudoso que mis estudiantes, and then you will have verb 2 and saber, for example. Saber conjugated into the AOCA subjunctive. Present tense would be que mis estudiantes sepan la respuesta. Respuesta. It is doubtful that my students know the answer. If you look at the equation of this sentence, the subject 1, it, verb 1, es, but this expression here is what we're focusing on. Es dudoso is an impersonal expression that expresses an opinion in the speaker's mind. It's doubtful. For example, it's doubtful that the Packers will win the Super Bowl. That is my opinion, where somebody else would say, no, they are going to win the Super Bowl. It is not doubtful that they are going to win. It is certain that they're going to win. So it's an opinion. So this impersonal expression has to express an opinion. So es dudoso que mis estudiantes is your subject 2. Again, you have got to have 2 different subjects. So es dudoso que mis estudiantes, and here's your second verb agreeing to estudiantes. It is the verb saber conjugated into the present tense subjunctive, and it is doubtful that my students know, que sepan, la respuesta, the answer. And this would be your rots, the rest of the sentence, that they know the object. I like to say the rest of the sentence. Okay? So again, this is one example of a basic present tense subjunctive sentence, and using an impersonal expression. The impersonal expression in this case is es dudoso. Okay? There is a long list of impersonal expressions that express an opinion, and that can be used here. This is one example.